Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor and his friends give you sports betting tips and picks. I'm your host, Professor Side. That's my actual job title and last name, which is part of the reason why the mathematical model that I've built to predict various sports outcomes is affectionately known as Sideline. You'll hear more about the model during the course of this episode, set to cover the best and or most interesting college basketball games scheduled to be played on Tuesday, January 24th, 2023. In case you're new here, check out the webpage on the banner. It's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new for some explanations and community rules. Don't forget that for all the Model A grade plays, you have to join the Patreon at the $5 or higher level to get that. It also gets you access to the Discord chat, which is the best place to get questions answered about these or other games, along with discussion on other sports. As always, remember there are no locks in gambling. So what Sideline provides are loves, likes, and leans. That is A, B, and C grades, or rather plays. It really wants you to make plays where it can't quite get there, but a better number or price would do it, and toss up games. The results for all of the recommended picks can be found either on Betstamp or Black Book Sports. I'll provide a link in the show for that. It's another place where you can sign up and get the model picks in case you don't want to do Patreon. It's the same stuff either place, so it doesn't really matter where you go. But you can check them out there. So we got receipts for all the picks in one place or the other. Also have the Google Sheet, which not only has all of the projections for every game, but a lot of good data summarizing how everything's done. I like to just put a lot of good information in the Google Sheets. But as always, take what you like and leave the rest. Lastly, please understand that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as we'd like to say we'll be profitable each and every day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Jake, yet again, I guess we'll just say that Monday went amazingly well or terrible or in between. And, it's Schrodinger's cat yet again for us, right?
Yeah. It's a great thing to have, because it could still be lovely. It could be.
It could. It could. It feels like another reason we need more day games in college basketball, because then at least we could come on here and be like, well, we started off with the winner. And then, of course, then you never really know. I mean, how many times have we had where, the first game went terrible and the rest of the night went lovely? Or you start off hot and then the rest of the night just is downhill, right? You just never really know. Because at least you have something to talk about right now. I have no idea. All we can say is the last 3 weeks have gone really well. And you just hope we keep it going. There's always good streaks and bad streaks. It's much more fun when you're on the good streaks like we've been as of late, right?
Yes, for sure. It's always a lot more fun to see the account in the green instead of the red.
Absolutely. Well, we've got another great Tuesday slate every Tuesday. Every Monday seems like it's a little bit of a downer, other than the MLK slate was pretty solid. But otherwise, the Monday slates are usually a bit of a downer, like 2 or 3 games that are good and a bunch of weaker games. Tuesday games are always loaded with, the 8th best game is always interesting. The 20th best game, the worst game of the day is usually not that bad. So a pretty solid, short slate on Tuesday, but a lot of good games. And we've picked out the 5 best that we think, and then we got a little bit of a wild card play as well. But before we get to that, some reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free. If you turn notifications on, you won't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. Already mentioned the Patreon, but check it out if you haven't yet. Lots of great benefits to be found over there above and beyond what's happening here. $3 per month gets you the play of the day. For another $2 a month, you get all of the model graded picks and access to the Discord chat. And for $5 more per month, you get ad-free shows and early access to every recommended play. Go to www.patreon.com/pickswiththeprofessor for more details. But even if you're not there, we're still thrilled to have you here. Let's get to it. Again, all lines courtesy of the unnamed domestic sports book that shall be named once they decide to sponsor us down the road. But sign up link in the show description for other books that we do recommend that have great value. If you have an account there, always shop around, get the better price. Hopefully you always can get a better price than what we are getting. We're going to start off here Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Central, Ohio State at Illinois. Jake, I really have one question and one question only, and that is Ohio State broken? I mean, let's just start there. Are they broken?
I don't know. I mean, it's the same. They're doing the same thing they did earlier in the year where they were really good, and it's just not falling. I don't know. I mean, Sewing was supposed to be a great shooter. He got hurt last year, and it's like the jump shot just hasn't come back. He's still a good player. It's just the jump shot's not there. So I don't know. And Zed Key, this could be me just being off, but he looks like he dropped too much weight. He was a little thicker in the previous years, and I think he dropped too much, and now he's getting bullied around a little bit. Maybe, I don't know. They're a wild team. Both these teams are wild teams. You don't know who you're going to get on any night.
Yeah, Ohio State seems to be suffering, and I know the Big 12 a little bit better, but they seem to be suffering the same fate that we saw with West Virginia, who went a long time before they finally got a conference win. Texas Tech, I think, still looking for a conference win. It's one of those things where when you play a tough conference, all these games are tough. You're going to have stretches where you look bad, and we always talk about there's going to be in the Big East, the Big 10, the Big 12. There's going to be a team that falls towards the bottom. It's not that bad. They just can't seem to win, and it feels personally like that's where Ohio State is. They just can't quite get out of their own way. They can't find it. They're just bad matchups, bad whatever. It's just nothing is going their way.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I'm going to lay the 3.5 with Illinois. At least with Illinois, like you said, they are a little bit of a don't know what you're going to get. But when I've seen good Illinois, I've seen them lately, and they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
Bad Illinois can struggle, but I just don't feel like I've seen good Ohio State in quite some time. So I'm going to lay the 3.5. Obviously, 3 would be better, more preferred if you can shop right, if you can find a 3. It was at 3 earlier in the day, but it's at 3.5 now. I still think it's the way I'd play it at 3.5, or I'd play Illinois -4 as well. The model says 3.2, but I think the model is just really having a hard time catching up to what we've seen from Ohio State here since conference play has started. So I think there's value here laying it on with the Fighting Illini. Total's 145.5. Model says 147.6, and the model's been pretty spot on with these totals. So the model would tell you to lean over, but I'm just going to be backing Illinois. Jake, I flipped up the segment here. I started you off with the question. Yeah. Did you have anything else to add about this game?
Yeah. Look, it's going to be surprising when you hear this, but Ohio State's got the more efficient offense. Ken Palm's got them ranked right around 6. It's the defensive end where Illinois is going to shine. They're really, really good at forcing turnovers and forcing their opponents into bad shots. That keeps all the field goal percentage all around down. They do a great job of rebounding the ball on defensive end and do a pretty good job on the offensive end too. They play with pace. They get a lot of high percentage shots off live ball turnovers. And Ohio State's going to struggles at forcing turnovers. They're going to have trouble getting any extra chances. It's going to be a lot of one and dones for them. Illinois' biggest weakness is they turn the ball over a little bit too much. Ohio State can't take advantage of that here. The free throw line, it's going to make you a little nervous because Illinois just doesn't seem to hit it because they got some big guys that don't like to shoot free throws. But on the other side of the floor, it's going to be, I think, there's a lot of size mismatch here. That's really Coleman Hawkins and Mayer are the best examples of this. They're going to have 2, 3, 4 inches on whoever Ohio State has them, unless it's Zed Key, and they're taller than Zed Key, but it's like an inch and a half. But Zed Key's going to have his hands full with Donji down low. Like we pointed out, Ohio State's dropped 5 of the last 6, and that's including games that should have been wins with Minnesota and Nebraska.
Home game against Minnesota, yeah. And even if it's on the road, still Nebraska, you said, should still be a win with the way they were playing earlier in the season.
Yeah, in the same period that they just dropped to those, Illinois beat them by 16 and 18 both of them on the road. I think Illinois is a play here.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss if I mentioned, Ohio State did win their last game at home against Iowa. That's the only bright spot that they've had in quite a long time. You have to go back to the start of the calendar year. They barely lost at home to Purdue. That was a solid showing. They won at Northwestern, but since then, like you said, it's been pretty rough. And we've just seen, again, Ohio State really struggle on the road as well. And then sometimes that's going to happen when you talk about having better offense than defense. Sometimes that offense isn't going to show up quite as well on the road. And that's the same sort of thing that I would expect here. If this game was in Columbus, I'd expect them to have a much better chance at winning the game. But, on the road, if their offense doesn't show up, which it hasn't in a lot of these road games, again, going back to that Northwestern game was the last time that their offense on the road did well. And then they're going to have a hard time here. And so we're going to lay it with Illinois.
Yeah, they expected a lot more out of McNeil, West Virginia transfer. This is going to have a lot of Big 12 transfers. I just realized that in this game. But he's just not having nearly as good of a year as he was having in the last couple of years at West Virginia. And I think that's really hurt him.
Yep, absolutely. 6 p.m. Central, Missouri at Ole Miss. Going to grab the 2 points with Missouri. Sideline says they win this 51% of the time. So whether it's the +2 push, again, 1's not as common. 2 is 2 and 3 are pretty common outcomes. If you want that push protection for 2, or take the money line, you're looking at maybe a +110. Maybe a +115 if you shop around and find a better price up in that range. I think makes a lot of sense for a wrong team favored game, in my opinion, and according to the model. Missouri's definitely the better team. I think they're better by enough to overcome the home court. I'm just not overly impressed with Ole Miss. They're not a bad team. I just like what I see from Missouri more. Obviously, that tempo and that offense can give teams fits, and Ole Miss's defense is better than Missouri's, absolutely, but their offense is further behind than their defense can make up for. I think even though this game is at Ole Miss, I think Missouri can go on the road and get the win. Total, this one's 145.5. Model says closer to 150, but I'm a little bit nervous. If I had to play it, I'd play the over. A little bit nervous on the over just because the total is being driven by Missouri, and we've seen in conference play a lot of teams have really tried to slow them down, and it kind of works to some extent. At least it prevents them from playing exactly their game. Missouri's offense is so efficient. Even when you slow them down, they still score a lot of points, but it does keep the totals a little bit lower than you would expect with the tempo that Missouri wants to play. So not knowing exactly what Ole Miss is going to try to do, I think I'd probably shy away from just messing with the total and just focus on Missouri, either again +2 or money line. Jake, what do you think on this one?
Yeah, I have no clue what's happening here. There is zero reason for Ole Miss to be favored. Their offense is just barely above average, and I mean they rebound the ball well. Everything else is so bad on the offensive end. They're shooting 30% from behind the arc, 67% for the free throw line. 20% of their possessions end in a turnover, and then more than half of those are a steal. So live ball, easy bucket, go the other way. They've got a very solid defense, and they makes it hard to find good open shots. But other than that, nothing special on the defensive end. Missouri has, on the other hand, is a top 10 offense. They've got a defense that's trending upward, but what they really do on defense is they force turnovers. And I just talked about Ole Miss has trouble holding on to the ball. Easy buckets to an efficient offense is going to be death. Missouri ranks 6th in the nation at forcing turnovers. It's more than a quarter of their opponents' possessions ended a turnover.
And when you think about Missouri, if you think about seeing any of their highlights, right, what do you see? It's them forcing a turnover, a 3-on-1 that leads to a pretty alley-oop or an easy dunk or something like that. I mean, that's kind of what they're doing.
Yeah, it makes for great, fun basketball to watch. Also, if teams can figure out how to hold the ball, you have a game like Kansas where they just can't figure anything out. But I mean, they struggle on
that's not Ole Miss.
yeah. They struggle rebounding the ball, so that kind of leans Ole Miss's favor. But I don't know that there's going to be that many missed shots that Ole Miss is going to be able to take advantage of that. I mean, the teams that have given Missouri trouble are ones that are very good on the defensive end, are very exceptionally well. Like you're looking at Alabama. Texas A&M was the worst defense they've lost to, and they're ranking around the mid-60s. You've got like Kansas, who took them out behind the woodshed. Yeah. There's one other one I'm missing, but either way, like I said, it's A&M was the worst team they've lost to, like worst defense they lost to, and that's still way better than Ole Miss's defense.
Yeah, or just in terms of quality of team, right? Yeah. A&M just a better team than Ole Miss, or you talk about Alabama and Kansas. Like, there's no shame in losing to those teams, right? So yeah, it's when you're playing a team of Ole Miss caliber, a team like Missouri should be able to handle them. I'm like you; it doesn't really make sense. I get why you say it's close to a pick'em. Again, if it was me, I'd make this Missouri -1, maybe -1.5. Getting 2 points or the plus odds seems like a gift. Why not take advantage of it for people? I think overthinking this one. This Missouri team is still pretty good, even though they aren't. They aren't at Alabama's level, right? They aren't at that top level of the conference or the country, but they're still a pretty solid team. And this Ole Miss team is just okay. And so they should be able to get the win, in our opinion. 7 p.m. Central, Oklahoma at TCU. Going to lay the 6.5 with TCU. Probably the biggest number that I can remember laying in the Big 12. For the most part, I'm just a fan of grabbing the points. There's a tiny bit of a fear here of TCU coming off of that massive win, the first time the team's ever won in Lawrence. To these players, some of that may not matter because half those losses in Lawrence or 70% or 80% or whatever were when those kids were in grade school, right? So it doesn't even matter for that. But it's a big win, obviously. It's a big win anytime somebody goes into the fog and waves, right? So you have to be a little bit concerned about coming off of that. But I kind of maybe I overthought this weekend with Kansas State when I said, I just didn't want to play aside, but Kansas State was the better team and, they should cover the number if they show up and play. I was worried about them coming off that big win and they took care of business. So I'm not going to overthink this one and just say, look, TCU is by far the better team here at home. I think that you saw just how good they were against Kansas and assuming there's no hangover effect, and you never really know, especially when you're dealing with 19-year-old kids, but assuming that there's no hangover effect, they should have no problem winning this game by more than 6.5. The model says 7.2, but in reality, I think closer. The way TCU's been playing, I think the model's still having a hard time catching up to how good this team is. In reality, I think 8 or 9 makes more sense. Again, assuming there's no issues with them coming off that big win. We saw from Oklahoma, again, more of the same this weekend, a team that just not good enough to get it done, not quite able to get over the hump. Again, a pretty solid team, and a team that if you put them in half of the other conferences around the country would be faring much better right now, more than half, obviously. But in this conference, that's just not good enough. They had a chance to beat Baylor at home, couldn't get it done. They'll have a chance to beat TCU at home. On the road, I just don't think they got much of a shot. So we're going to lay it with TCU minus 6.5 here. Total's 138. Model says 134.5. So the model would indicate go under, largely due to Oklahoma's pace. I'm not going to play the under on this one simply because both these teams have been scoring a little bit more than expected as of late. And so I'm just going to leave the total alone. Going under in a Big 12 game is usually a scary proposition anyway. So I'm going to focus on TCU minus 6.5. Jake, what do you got for us?
Like, this is fascinating to see what Jamie Dixon's going to pull around with this team. It's going to be fun. TCU is just very, very good. It's like you don't want to get over in depth to it. Think about the hangover effect with Kansas and all that, but they are an elite defense. I know everybody wants to talk about this offense and how they put up 83 and they're shot well and they did everything well that game, but the defense is borderline elite. They really shut everybody down and made Wilson try to beat them, and that didn't work. And that
And as we talked about yesterday in previewing the Baylor Kansas game, right? They forced so many turnovers. They pressured them, and just Kansas was in their own building. Kansas was suffocated, and that's just you don't see that very often.
No. I mean, I can't think of the last time a Bill Self team looked that bad. It's all the credit to TCU because they did, like, everybody thought that Kansas State game with them was going to be close, and TCU blew them out of the water too. They're kind of got the same attitude as a football team where they feel disrespected and they're just going through eliminating everybody. And I don't see Oklahoma really get in their way. They play slow, so the total you want to lean, the under scares you. But I mean, they've also got turnover issues, and the slow pace and giving this TCU team any extra chances is going to be bad. Don't expect all the threes from TCU to go in. They're a very bad three-point shooting team in general, but they really do well at taking the ball to the hole, and that's where they prefer. Like the second half is exactly how they prefer to play that game, and I see this whole game acting like that second half of the Kansas game.
Yeah, like you said, if they're going to turn the ball over against this defense, pressure, and it's not just turn the ball over like Kansas did, back at the 3-point line, that's going to lead to a lot of easy layups, and TCU, they might run away with this one just like they did against Kansas, simply because you're getting a lot of quick buckets, easy buckets like that is recipe for a blowout. That's what happened against Kansas, and it's got a good chance of happening here as well.
Yeah, especially with the teams that play slow like that, it's really hard for them to make a comeback because they just the limited possessions they're not used to. It makes them really uncomfortable. Like they just can't make that run.
Yep, absolutely. To the 8 p.m. games, North Carolina at Syracuse. There's our double dip game for you. I'm going to grab the 3.5 with Syracuse and go over 150.5. With regards to the side, this is an A-grade play according to the model, which says that it should beat North Carolina by 2.2. Obviously, North Carolina is the better team. But are they the better team by enough to overcome what should be a pretty rocking crowd there? Syracuse, obviously, a pretty decent home court edge, tough place to travel to. Obviously, always brings it when North Carolina, Duke, Virginia, come to town. They're going to be bringing it here. I don't really know what to expect. I kind of think this is one of those anything can happen type games. And so grabbing the 3.5 points, I think makes a lot of sense. Should be a lot of points, some really good offenses here, some questionable defenses. I just still think that there's a chance that we haven't quite stopped overvaluing North Carolina on the whole. They're getting still a little bit too much respect. Obviously, they're not getting quite the same respect early on, but I still think they're a little bit overvalued here still. And again, Syracuse, A team I was a little bit down on earlier in the season, but they've actually overperformed model expectations over the last month by about 5 points a game. So they've been playing pretty well. If they overperform the expectations again here, they got a chance to win this one. Should at least hang in there. Again, lots of points. Model thinks 152. Should be, again, a fun one to watch. Jake, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I mean, as a Duke fan, this is really hard to say, but since they lost that Virginia Tech game, they've been playing so much better. North Carolina has. Still not shooting it great from beyond the arc, but having a guy like Bake out underneath really doesn't erases that. I mean, like since the December 10th games, they have scored 80 point or less than 80 points 4 times, and 2 of those were very good defenses. One of them being Virginia, they kept them under 80. They're just my favorite play of this double dip is the over. I just really don't see where anybody's getting in anybody's way. North Carolina's going to want to get down the ball, play faster than they normally do because they're not great shooters. They don't want to have to work around the 2-3 zone, so they want to score quick. Syracuse, that's a big advantage playing in the Carrier Dome. Used to shooting in that arena is a big advantage. You see teams struggle a little bit shooting just because it's a very weird background and messes with their head. Syracuse used to it. They're already a good 3-point shooting team. North Carolina struggles guarding the 3-point arc anyway. I've talked about it on here before. Zones are hard to rebound out of, so Baycott should just have a field day for any of the missed shots. I just don't see a lot of stops here, and I think this is going to be a really tight game with the way Syracuse shoots it and how anytime they can set their defense, it's really going to make it hard on North Carolina.
Yeah, it feels like a fun, close, high score, almost like a tournament game a little bit with that weird backdrop of shooting. Of course, like you said, Syracuse used to it, but a lot of the times you end up in these tournament games where it's, especially once you get past the first weekend, where they play in weirder arenas and the angles just all look a little bit different. But one of those where it's just like each team should be throwing a lot of haymakers. I mean, Syracuse, the way they're hitting those threes, should score a lot. And like I said, when they miss, that should let North Carolina get points quick. So it should just be back and forth, just lots of scoring. Again, who really knows how it's going to play out? A lot of it's going to depend on the Syracuse shoot 39% from 3 or 29% from 3, right? That's going to kind of be the difference in the game. But just on average, I think this has got a good chance to be close. It might have overtime that could potentially help you cover 3.5, could help you with the over. Should be a fun one to watch. A couple different angles for you on that one. And the last one of the main games before we get to our wild card game at the end here, 8 p.m. Central, Kansas State at Iowa State. This might be the game that we discussed the longest of any game this season. I'm just trying to figure out the angle for it. Iowa State is a 5-point home favorite. The model says 5.3. I've loved backing Iowa State and Kansas State. Both. They've been both really good. So I've been preaching all season that both these teams are undervalued. I can't touch the side. I can't lay more than 5 with Iowa State against a really good Kansas State team. I also feel like getting 5 is just not enough value because we've seen Iowa State at home look really, really good. They're a good team anyway. They look even better at home. So I just don't think the side is worth investing in a number like 5. The model would lay 4 with Iowa State should it get there, and it would grab 7 with Kansas State should it get there. Those seem like pretty reasonable propositions. That's not what we have on the table. So instead, we're going to go with the over 134. The model, like if you think about a 5-point spread, that would be 69.5 to 64.5. And when you look at what Iowa State's done at home, I think they ought to be able to get into the 70s. And Kansas State's offense is good enough. I think they ought to score some points as well. They got a good chance to hang in there. You got a good chance for overtime. Got a lot of ways this can go over. 134 is just not a big number. And Iowa State's got a great defense, but their offense is pretty good too. Kansas State's going to play with tempo. They've got a pretty good offense. And if you go back to some of the previous games Iowa State's played, if Kansas State doesn't score many points, we've seen other games where that's happened in Ames, Iowa, and Iowa State scored enough points to get you to a number like 134 anyway. So I think there's more ways you win the over than any other play that I can find in this one. So over 134 is the recommended play. Jake, tell us more.
Yeah, I know it's counterintuitive to go over an Iowa State game, no matter what sport they're playing.
True.
This game, they are night and day at home and away. At home, they are a lethal offense, along with the defense that comes with them. Kansas State, very, very good offense, very good team. Their defense isn't quite on Iowa State's level, but it should be a very tight game.
Not many are.
Yeah, they're going to want to score quick when they can. They do not want to play a half court game. Pace is going to get a little more possessions than most are expecting because of that. Because Kansas State nobody wants to go in a half court game with Iowa State and try to figure out that defense. And that's going to speed the game up a little bit. Iowa State shoots it lights out at home. I mean, you were mentioning they played Texas Tech a week or two ago. 84-50 was the final there with a sleepy second half. That's 134 that pushes on this number. And Kansas State, a lot better offense than what Texas Tech is carrying. I don't see a blowout like that coming. I think this game ends both teams in the 70s. So I think it's just well over this 134.
Yeah, and I think like the point that you made that I like the most is just that Kansas State, they can play with tempo, and you have to imagine they want to in this game because you do not want to be in a half-court game with Iowa State in Ames. I mean, that just seems like a disaster because they can shoot the ball pretty well there, and at home, that defense, you're going to have a hard time scoring there if you do that. So they're going to have to get buckets quick in transition as much as they can. That should get us extra possessions. And again, Iowa State, the way they score at home should get us some extra points too. So over 134 is the play there, which takes us to our overtime game. We're going to go back to the well when we went to last week, laid a big number with Kent State. Let's do it again. Kent State minus 13 at Northern Illinois. We've sung Kent State's praises enough. 16-3 on the season, all three losses. They were right in the game, covered easily, could have easily won, played really well. They're obviously really good. Northern Illinois, not. It is on the road, but you got a Kent State team that is 15-3 against the number this year. 13 is a big number, but we've seen this Kent State team too many times in conference just expand that lead late because they just continue to relentlessly force turnovers, get quick layups, and that's kind of what you want when you're laying a big number as a team that even late in the game is going to be looking to lock you down and extend the score. And that's what they do. And they try to extend the score with layups and not three-pointers. And that gives you a little bit more confidence too. With three-pointers, if a team's too reliant on a three-pointer, it might win by 40, but if they miss all of them, they might lose, right? But Kent State just constantly getting those forcing turnovers, getting layups, get you solid 2 points every time, and that just slowly builds that lead over the second half. Jake, we think they can cover 13. What else you got for us?
Yeah, you can go back and check out any of the videos how much we've praised Kent State's defense. It's incredible.
Yep.
We'll have to dive into that. What we are going to mention there is going against that is one of the worst offenses in the NCAA. They are ranked inside the 300s. They turn the ball over a lot. They don't rebound the ball whatsoever. They don't make free throws. They get a lot of their shots blocked. They get the ball stolen a lot, and they run in the shot clock, so throwing it out of bounds a lot. They're just not very good on the offense. I know that's counterintuitive if you look at their last two games where they've put up their last two games where they've put up in the 80s, but that's against two really, really bad teams in Miami, Ohio, and Eastern Michigan. Look back at the Toledo game; they scored 67. Toledo's not got a great defense by any stretch, I think they're going to struggle to get to 60 here, and I think Kent State can just hang whatever number they want.
Yeah, model says 61 for Northern Illinois, and I'm like you. I mean, maybe 60, but 60 seems about like the cap. And again, I would not be surprised if they finish with something like 57 points in this game because they're just going to have a hard time scoring against Kent State. And like you said, I love Kent State's offense, the way that they're not just so three heavy. And that helps you again on the road. It helps you on the road, right? It's one of those things where the road effect doesn't quite affect them as much because if you're getting turnovers and layups, it doesn't matter where you're playing unless you're playing on the moon and the gravity's affected, right? The layups are usually about the same, right? There's nothing that you're looking at to affect your shooting or anything like that. The crowd noise, I mean, you should go make the layup, right? Most of these college kids can make layups. You and I can. We always talk about you and I aren't very good. We can make layups, right? If they're in transition, no one's around us. So that's going to help us right here. So it's one of those where I think you're a little bit afraid to lay a big number with Kent State on the road, but I think the way they play means they're going to cover this more. That's what's happened so far this year. It doesn't mean that it's a lock that it will happen again, but we like our chances here. They've been put in the situation multiple times, and more times than not, they tend to continue to run away. They're going to try to win this game by 18 and not 8, and that should help us cover 13.
Yep. This year, you're not getting rich fading Kent State. It is all about putting money in your pocket by backing them. Doesn't matter what the number is or the team.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That's all we've got for you then today. Jake, any parting words?
No, I'm just excited for I want Monday to happen because we've only got a couple good games. I want to get to this Tuesday where I can just sit on my couch all night and do nothing but watch basketball.
I mean, to be fair, that probably describes most of our nights, but it is what it
At
is.
least
It's the quality, right?
Forcing myself, it's just good game after good game after good game.
There you go. Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for tuning into this episode of Picks with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can control the sports betting content we provide on this channel. It's dropped right into your feed. Be back again tomorrow with more college basketball betting content. And until then, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can eat your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.